There is a number that lives in the human imagination as a symbol of arrival. A threshold that once crossed is supposed to mean something has fundamentally changed. For decades, earning or saving $100,000 carried a particular psychological weight, a quiet signal that a person had moved from ordinary to exceptional, from struggling to stable, from the financial margin to the financial center. And yet something strange happens when people actually reach that number. The feeling they expected doesn't come. The security they anticipated isn't there. The freedom they imagined remains just out of reach, and they find themselves wondering what went wrong, or whether they miscalculated something along the way. What they miscalculated wasn't their savings rate or their salary negotiation. What they miscalculated was the number itself, or more precisely, what the number actually means inside a modern economic system that has quietly and systematically eroded the psychological benchmarks most people still use to measure financial progress. To understand why $100,000 no longer means what people believe it means, you have to understand a concept called purchasing power erosion, and more specifically, how inflation doesn't just raise prices in a linear, visible way, it reshapes the entire architecture of what money can do. In 1980, $100,000 in annual income placed a household comfortably inside the top 10% of earners in the United States. It meant a paid-off home was within reach within a decade. It meant college tuition for 2 children could be funded without debt. It meant retirement at 65 was a mathematical certainty, not an aspiration. That same nominal number today, $100,000, places a single-income household barely above the median in high-cost-of-living cities, often unable to afford a 30-year mortgage without significant financial strain, and statistically likely to carry more than $30,000 in consumer and student debt simultaneously. The number didn't change. The world the number exists inside changed completely, and most people's psychological relationship to that number never updated to match. This is what behavioral economists refer to as a nominal anchor, a fixed reference point the mind attaches to, regardless of whether the underlying reality that reference point once described still exists. Humans are remarkably poor at adjusting for invisible, gradual change. When prices rise slowly over years rather than overnight, the brain doesn't register the cumulative shift with the same urgency it would register a sudden shock. You don't feel inflation the way you feel a pay cut. You feel it as a vague sense that things used to go further, that your parents somehow managed more on less, that the math of your life doesn't quite add up, even when the spreadsheet looks reasonable. And the architecture of aspiration in media, in culture, in financial content has not kept pace with this reality. The benchmarks reinforced in popular imagination, make 6 figures, save 100,000, hit 1 million, were formed in economic contexts that no longer exist. $1 million in investable assets, long considered the threshold of true financial independence, now generates approximately $40,000 per year at a standard 4% withdrawal rate, which is below the median household income in most developed nations. $100,000 in savings, celebrated as a milestone by nearly every personal finance platform, represents less than 2 years of median expenses for a family of 4 in any major metropolitan area. The psychological damage this creates is not trivial. When people reach a number they were told would feel like security and instead feel the same low-grade financial anxiety they always felt, most of them don't conclude that the benchmark was wrong. They conclude that they are wrong, that they are bad with money, undisciplined, not earning enough, spending too carelessly. The threshold illusion doesn't just fail to deliver the feeling it promised, it redirects the blame for that failure inward, toward the individual, away from the structural reality that the threshold itself was measuring a world that no longer exists. Understanding this doesn't change your income, it doesn't lower your rent or eliminate your debt, but it does something that may be more valuable than any single financial tactic. It recalibrates your internal map. When you stop measuring your progress against numbers inherited from a different economic era, you can begin constructing benchmarks that are actually meaningful in the economy you inhabit, not the one your parents described, not the one personal finance culture still references, but the one you are actually navigating. The goal isn't a number. The goal is a ratio, the distance between what your money produces and what your life requires, measured honestly, updated continuously, and never mistaken for something fixed.